Hi guys, welcome back to Miscellaneous Pleasures. I'm not really feeling good. I'm not talking health wise, I'm talking football wise, Manchester United wise. Since the last time that I made my football video, United have managed to lose against Sheffield and then draw against Arsenal. The draw against Arsenal was in many ways much worse as a result simply because we did have chances in that game and we should have won that game, not because of the way we played, but because of the chances that we had that we should have converted. Point number one. Point number two is that there's something that I mentioned in, I think, in my Liverpool review video, or probably somewhere along those times, is that United have now, after the Arsenal game, have played the big six, your traditional big six being Spurs, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, and United being the sixth team. We have played them six times. So we have drawn nil all against Chelsea, Man City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. So four games we have drawn 0-0. We lost one. We have lost two games. That is 1-6-1 against Liverpool Spurs and 1-1-0 against Arsenal. So essentially, we have got 4 points from six games, and we have scored one goal. Yes, you could argue that we have had four clean sheets, which is a good sign. But then we are supposed to win games, and at least, if you compare it to the last season where I think we had about 20 points or something from the 10 games that we had against the big six, this season having only four from the first six of them is extremely disappointing. Like, I can't even put into words how disappointing that is. And that is probably the reason we're not going to win the league this season. The Sheffield game, yeah, overall it is disappointing performance, but then this is how this season is different from last season, right? Like, if people come to me and ask, like, is there any improvement to Manchester United from last season? The obvious answer would be yes, because of the position of the table that we are in, and the fact that at the same time last season and this season, if you compare it, we probably have like about 10 points more. But the fact of the matter is, last season we played well against the big six, and you could also include probably a Leicester City into that mix from last season. And we played poorly against the bottom, or the rest of the league, you could say. So this time around, the problem has been that, or the good thing has been that we have played well against the rest of the league, where I think, I might as well start sharing my screen to show. And to the people who are listening to this in the podcast, I'll make sure to explain to you what I am seeing. So the league table as it stands, we have 41 points from 21 games. And of these 21, I obviously said, six against the big six, where we have got 4 points. So if you subtract them, we have 37 points from 15 games. 37 points from 15 games is about an average of 2.5 per game. That is magnificent. And putting it into much more understandable words, of those 15 games, I think we have lost two. Yeah, we have lost two games and we have drawn one. Yeah. So basically, of the 15 games that we have played against the rest of the league, we have won 12 of them. That is an 80% winning rate, which is just extraordinary, at least compared to what we had last season. So that's definitely an improvement. And the fact of the matter is, if you improve in one end so much and then you sort of depreciate yourself and like deprecate your performances and stuff like that in another aspect of the league, uh, that doesn't, like, and the fact of the matter is, it's not like we have degraded slightly, we have degraded a lot and we have improved a lot in the other side. So that's exactly the position that United are in right now, I feel like. And I don't know, like, are United out of the title race? Okay, 3 points behind Man City, who have a game in hand. So you can almost count it as 6 points behind leaders. Mathematically speaking, no. Going by Premier League history, no. Because, you know, 6 points behind, it's the second positioned team, 6 points behind the first place team. That's hardly anything. I mean, especially considering the fact that we have a game against the leader. So if we somehow manage to win that, that's obviously a big boost. And and after that, it's just 3 points, and 3 points is just a game. So yeah, on theory, obviously we are still in the title race. So are Liverpool. But going by the performances and what I expect from Manchester United, I'd probably say that United are not going to win the league. I'd probably say that the best case scenario is us finishing second, about 7 points here and there from the first place team, which would probably be Man City. And that's probably one of the reasons I guess I'm going to title this video as Are Manchester City the runaway favorites for the season, for this Premier League season. So yeah, and I mean their performances have been absolutely brilliant. And the brilliant thing in those sort of the results that they're getting is not that, I mean, yes, they are winning all the games, but then they're also winning them sort of convincingly. And at times they're winning games like 1-0, 2-0, not necessarily 5-0. Even though right now the screen that I'm showing, they just beat West Brom like a week ago. Not even week, I think like 4 5 days ago, 5-0. But then if you look at their other results, they've beaten Brighton 1-0, they have beaten Aston Villa 2-0, they have beaten Sheffield 1-0, they have beaten Palace 4-0. So, and they obviously beat Chelsea 3-1. So it's sort of the last few results that I'm seeing, at least in this year. So the fact of the matter is they are having games where they are scoring goals and keeping clean sheets, and then they are having games where they're not scoring goals. They're probably scoring one or two, but then they're keeping the clean sheet. This Ruben Diaz and Stones, Ruben Diaz and Laporte with Edison, I think, yeah, absolutely brilliant signing. And I mean, that's probably the reason that they're going to be or they are, in my opinion, the runaway favorites for winning the season. Yeah, that's just Man City. Liverpool have had some sort of a comeback, in all honesty. I mean, even in the game that they lost to us in the FA Cup 3-2, they did play all right. They did not play great, but then they did create chances. And then they beat Spurs 3-1, and then they beat, and who did they beat yesterday? I forget. They beat somebody. Ah, they beat West Ham, right? Yeah, they beat West Ham 3-1. So, and in all three games, I mean, in the game that they lost to us, Salah scored twice. Against Liverpool, I think Mane scored twice. No, Mane scored once, and then Trent and Firmino scored the other two. And then yesterday, Salah scored twice again. So they are sorry, my English is worked out. So Liverpool are beginning to get those front three firing. And if they continue to do that, then I don't see any reason why they can't beat Brighton. And this sort of brings me to the sort of next few fixtures. And I'm only here talking about the top three, right? I mean, I'm not talking about Leicester City, but then I'm talking about Liverpool, Man City, and United. I will get to the other teams briefly. But what I wanted to talk about before that was that Liverpool's next three fixtures are Manchester City, Leicester City, and Everton. And there's obviously the Leipzig game in the Champions League in between all of them. Compare that to, let's say, Manchester City, who are playing Burnley next. Then they have Liverpool, Tottenham, Arsenal, West Ham, and Manchester United. And there's obviously a couple of like FA Cup and the Champions League games in between. So I think in a season like this, especially in in a situation like this where the Premier League table is so like, just only 3 or 4 points between all the teams, I almost feel like every single month is very important, because in this month we have Man City having much more difficult fixtures than probably a Manchester United, because I haven't seen United fixtures. Uh, but I'm pretty much confident that they're not that difficult. I mean, difficult for United is a slightly different term, but then let's just go with it. I mean, we have Southampton, Everton, West Ham, West Brom, Newcastle, and then finishing the month off with Chelsea. So ideally, we should be like getting at least 4 wins of the next 5 games in the league. Oh, the West Ham game is an FA Cup game. Sorry. So of the next 4 Premier League games, we should be getting 3 wins and probably a draw. That's the best worst case sort of I can think of. If we do manage to have a worse record than that, then I definitely think we're out of the title race. If we do get 10 points from the next 4 games, I feel like we would still be in with a chance, because I do see Man City probably dropping a point here and there. Maybe against Liverpool, maybe against Spurs or somebody like that. Even Arsenal, for that matter of fact. I mean, they are having a really good period of results, and I don't see any reason why Arsenal can't get a point against City, not three. Um, I will dedicate a separate few minutes for Lampard and Chelsea and Thomas Tuchel and Tuchel and things like that. But before that, I don't see Leicester City being in the title race. In all honesty, I feel like Leicester are in a similar position to Manchester United in a weird way, because even though United boast a much better squad and you know considerably better team, and they also finished above Leicester City last season. They finished stronger, and this season we have had a really good period. It's just that last 2 games we have dropped 4 points, or 5 points. Sorry. The thing is, Leicester City, they are missing Jamie Vardy at the moment, and they have a good side, but I don't see them sustaining any good amount of results. And I think their best case scenario is probably finishing with about 70 points. And with 70 points, they may not really get top 4, but then they may have a chance, because people like West Ham, Spurs, Everton, Aston Villa, I'm not really sure as to how much sustenance that they have. I mean, Spurs are in sort of a downward spiral themselves, but people like Arsenal and Chelsea, I think, are probably the 2 teams that I would, if I was a betting man, I would probably place my money on Chelsea or Arsenal to finish on top 4. Arsenal probably not, because they have been getting good results with bunch of kids, and those kids have been playing really well, and some of them are really talented. But I feel like there'll come a point where this stretch of results that they have been having, there'll come a point where that will end. When it does end, I feel like there will also come a point where they'll probably have like 5 to 10 fixtures where they won't get as many points as they have been getting now. And that's probably a reason that they won't finish in the top 4. Chelsea, on the other hand, I think they have a fantastic team. And you know what? Before I get to Chelsea, I just want to talk about Spurs. And this is something that I saw as a Manchester United fan time and time again with Jose Mourinho. When a lot of people talk about how, I mean, they were talking last season and the season before about how Mourinho probably should never have been sacked by United, because after he left, there was a period of time where we were average, especially beginning of last season, the first half of last season. And the thing is, Mourinho was sacked and the decision was correct. Maybe he deserved more time, but then Mourinho is probably the main reason why Mourinho did not get that time. For 2 reasons, obviously, his relationship with players, and if you manage to have issues with players every place you go for the last 4 or 5 times, then at some point of time the finger has to be pointed at you. So Mourinho was at fault there. Maybe the players were also, but then Mourinho was also at fault there, and for those reasons, I think his sacking was correct. But and I mean, this first thing that is happening right now this season is the reason I think Mourinho should have been sacked, and he was sacked, and that was a correct decision. It's that for far too often, what used to happen with Mourinho in Manchester United was, let me give an example of a game, let's say United playing Stoke City, Burnley, Southampton. These games, United would probably start all right. They will, for the first 20 25 minutes, nothing much would happen. The score would still be nil all, and no team would have probably gotten any good chance. And then United will have a good period of play where they would score a goal, going into halftime 1-0. And as fans, seeing the second half of the first half, we probably go, you know what? Going into the second half, United should win this comfortably. Or at least they should easily score the second goal, and then we should finish the game off comfortably. The second half will start, and we'll be watching the game. The players won't be as enthusiastic, as energetic as they should be. And the game will be going on, and then the opposition will have like a half chance here and there. You'll probably have a half chance here and there for the first 30 minutes. And then by the time the 75th minute comes and the score is still 1-0, you'll be looking at the watch, you'll be looking at the clock, you'll be looking at the game, and you'll be like, why aren't we creating more? And then as the half goes on, you almost get this feeling, which does happen, it's not just a feeling, it's a fact, that your team, Manchester United in my case, and right now with Spurs, your team will sit back more and more, invite pressure more and more, and the opposition will make this weird sort of substitution, not weird, but then logically correct sort of substitution of probably a creative player who hasn't been in a good form, but then he's creative, right? So people like Anthony Knockaert, I remember having a good game against United randomly. I remember people from Newcastle, like Burnley, all of them having like good games. And in those 82nd, 83rd minutes, the opposition will score from a corner, from a good play. It doesn't really matter. The opposition scores, right? And then you suddenly start going for those long balls, and he'll bring on Fellaini. Right now, I mean, I don't think he has a Fellaini in Spurs, or his type of player, obviously. But then he'd go for those rubbish long ball nonsense, and then the game will finish 1-1. And then in the press conference, if somebody asks, why did this happen, or why did your team play like this, he'll be like, did you see the stats? We dominated this game. And then he'll point out some refereeing error, he'll point out some defensive mistakes, we should be concentrating and shit like that. And then in the end, and this would continue for 6-7 games, I mean, sorry, this would continue for the whole season, but then this would happen a lot. This would happen like 7 to 10 times in the season. Sometimes you would win 1-0, sometimes you'd get 2-0, sometimes you would draw 1-all. And this doesn't just happen with 1-0 at halftime, right? This also happens with 2-0 at halftime, which is probably worse because the other team has nothing to lose, and they just come and probably score a goal in the first 10 minutes, and then your team starts parking the bus. And this sort of play is the reason I think Mourinho is going to get sacked. Maybe not this season's end, but then definitely the next season. And the cycle is going to continue. And I just don't get why Mourinho sides can't. Why can't he set up his sides to actually score a goal at 1-0? Why does his team only have to try and score a goal at 0-0? Like, that's what something that I never understand. And that's probably going to be his downfall. Enough of Mourinho, and let me get to Chelsea. Frank Lampard did a very good job at Chelsea, to be honest. He probably had to go. I wouldn't disagree with that. I think the mistake that Lampard made, that's something I feel most of inexperienced managers would, is buying 7 or 8 players. And I think those 7 or 8 players that he bought, I think that was the beginning of the end, in my opinion. Not just because of the fact that most of them haven't really played well, but the fact of the matter is, when you get 7 or 8 players, like let me count, they got Havertz, Werner, Ziyech, or Ziyech, Ziyech. They got Thiago Silva, they got Mendy, so that's already 6. Am I forgetting somebody? I feel like I'm not forgetting somebody. Oh, and they got Chilwell. English, but still, new player. So they get these 7 players right. First of all, a certain set of people got Chelsea top 4 in his first season. When you bring in 7 players, you're sort of telling the team that I don't trust most of you. He sold quite a few players, but then when you bring 7 people who, on to be really honest, of those 7 people, I think 5 or 6 of them are starters. So when you bring 5 to 6 starting 11 people into the team, you're basically telling the team that you're not good enough. That's one of those problems. Obviously, the second problem is that since they're new players, there's obviously going to be a time to settle in. And I'm going to take the example of Solskjaer here because Solskjaer in his first full season, he got Maguire, Wan Bissaka, Daniel James. And in the January transfer window, he got Bruno and Igalo. If you look at it, Igalo wasn't a starter. Dan James was essentially a starter, but then he should have been. But then he was never better than anybody at the side. Like you could argue that Mata would start a lot of games. You would argue that Lingard would start a lot of games. You would argue that Green would have his chance now and then. So when you bring Daniel James in, he's not going to be your starter. Maguire was brought in a position where there weren't a lot of good quality people, and that made sense. And the same goes for right back in Van Bissaka. And then obviously Bruno came where there was a depleted sort of midfield, and then he was the creative spark. And then this season he has got Cavani in as a backup, sometimes starting for the striker position. And then he got Teles in, sort of like a backup and as well as a competition sort of thing for the left back position. And then, well, he did make only 2 signings, right? I mean, yeah, they got Pelistri and Diallo, but I'm not going to talk about them. So when you make transfers like this, what happens is you, first of all, have the advantage of gelling the new players with the older players very well and sort of build the chemistry around before adding a lot more. And second of all, you're not spending the amount of money in one single go like Lampard did. And Lampard had a net transfer spend of about 215 million, I think. Not sure of the number. It's a big enough number. And what happens is if you don't perform after those inputs that you've had into the team, then as a manager you're going to get sacked. I mean, that was always coming. The only reason Lampard would not have gotten the sack was maybe if he had been in the top 4. If he had been in the top 4, then he wouldn't have gotten the sack and things would have been well. But they weren't, and he was sacked. So that was, I think, always a big mistake. Talking of the actual team, I mean, I don't care what people say, but Timo Werner is a fantastic striker. I think he scores a lot of goals under Klopp. He probably is, I mean, I wouldn't say that he would score under Solskjaer because our forwards haven't been doing that well, to be honest. But then he would score a lot of goals at Manchester City. I think he scores quite a bit of goals at Arsenal, in all honesty. Just a second. And yeah, that's the reality. And I think he hasn't been used well. And then he has been low in confidence also because he has been used a lot, but then a lot of times on the left wing, and then he hasn't been bedded into the team. And that's my sort of criticism of Lampard slightly. It's that, again, I've used the Solskjaer sort of example where, I mean, you would argue, I mean, I completely forgot Donny van de Beek before when I was talking about the transfers this season. Van de Beek, I'll come to Van de Beek probably not in this video, but in something else. So the same goes for Havertz, and I think Havertz is a very good player, but I'm not really sure if he's good enough. Not good enough, but then you see, does he have the attributes to be a Premier League player? I'm not sure. If he goes back to Bundesliga, I think he'll be a star. ZH, again, fantastic player. I wanted United to sign him, and I'm pretty sure that he will come good. And what Thomas Tuchel, whatever his name is, what he has at Chelsea is a front four of Werner, Ziyech, Pulisic, and Havertz. He obviously has people like Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, Olivier Giroud, Callum Hudson-Odoi as like people who could also play in those four positions. His midfield is probably a problem. I mean, Kante hasn't been having a great time, and Jorginho is somebody that I do not rate. Kovacic is all right, and Billy Gilmore is far too young. So that's a position that they have troubles in, and the defense is sort of also troublesome. But there is potential in that team, and can see a I can see a universe where Chelsea play a really good. They play a lot of good football in the next few months, and they finish in the top four. That's something that I can see happening. The only sort of stumbling block that they will have is again, I think they'll probably have a good amount of results now because of the new manager effect. But then it will be a challenge for Tuchel if he can manage to have good tactics. And if he manages to have good tactics, and I don't see a reason why Chelsea won't do well. I am anxious about our game against Chelsea whenever it is. I don't remember really. I think it is in the end of February, right? So that's something that I am looking forward to anxiously. Yeah, that's all for this video, guys. I'm not really sure what is to talk about. I know that I have a lot of things to talk about, but nothing of them is really striking me at the moment. And I do have a couple of other videos to make today, so I just wanted this to be a brief one, even though it has extended to about 27 minutes now, close to 28. Yeah, that's it. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. The main question right now is, are Manchester City the runaway favorites for winning the season? And the answer would probably be 40% yes. Hopefully they will draw against Liverpool, probably drop points against Arsenal and teams like that, and other teams would catch up to them much more, and in the end hopefully United would win. But even if they don't, I hope that United finish as close as possible to Manchester City and Liverpool. So yeah, that's all for this video. Bye.